and emerging.
This evening,
we're delighted to welcome
for the first time
Dr. Deborah Bryon,
coming to us
by Zoom
and talk about time and trauma, the wisdom of enduring shamanism.
All right. Well, the following presentation is taken from my book, Time and Trauma in Analytic Psychology and Psychotherapy, The Wisdom of Andean Shamanism, and it's based on my experience as a Jungian analyst and a Paco, a person who works with Andean medicine traditions. The paintings in this presentation are my own, used to illustrate my journey over the last 24 years. Jung said that psychic healing occurs through numinous archetypal experience, working with symbols and images. Similar to Jung's use of symbols, shamans or Pacos use ceremony and rituals to create vessels that contain archetypal energy and provide a means of differentiating from the experience in order to make meaning. Rituals also create psychic space to move around in that serves as a bridge or gateway between the conscious and the collective unconscious mind. In Andean medicine, the intent is to move beyond symbolism to the energetic level of pre-verbal experience. In the deeper realms of shamanic nonverbal experience, the image is no longer relevant and drops away. My own exploration of Andean medicine has been through working with the Pacos in Peru, outside of Cusco in the Sacred Valley, and the ayahuasqueros in the Amazon jungle. The way I will approach this topic is through the lens of the Pacos. In addition to describing shamanic states of ecstasy, I will also include a description of the shadow experience of Andean medicine or shamanism. As is in the case with most things, there are both positive and negative aspects of shamanic experience. While I'm presenting this material, slides will be shown of both photographs of energy emanations or orbs emerging from the land, as well as paintings I have done that express my experience of the energetic collective. The communities of many indigenous cultures practicing shamanism respect and honor their ancestors. The experience of relating to ancestral lineage is natural and necessary for basic survival. In native cultures, everything in life begins, exists, and ends through direct dialogue and interaction with the land. To complete the Ouroboros cycle, or the life cycle of death and rebirth, what is taken from the land returns through the land to be born again. Pacos call the land Pachamama, or Mother Earth. Pacos of Peru teach that one must remember to source from Pachamama, because unlike people, Pachamama is constant and always there. As in Jungian psychology, the emphasis is shifting away or moving beyond the literal symbol or concretization of ritual into archetypal energy held by the symbol, which in shamanism is deeper communion with the land. In shamanism, forging this relationship happens through ceremony and ritual with the intent of giving back. The land is not only the symbol of the Great Mother, the land is the Great Mother. A reciprocal relationship and dialogue develop between the Paco and the land, which serves as a functional spiritual gateway between ordinary and non-ordinary reality. Everything happens in the natural order, the relationship existing between all living things, which Pacos refer to as Kausai Pacha. How is it possible for someone in Western culture to move from symbolic understanding through the veil between ordinary and non-ordinary reality into experience of the energetic collective and back? First, by approaching the experience with a beginner's mind. We must acknowledge that this other realm is real without preconceived notions of what the experience should or will be. For many people, this shift occurs most easily in a state of being in awe with nature, when spiritual awareness of the existence of something greater becomes tangible. Similar to catching something out of the corner of one's eye, or planting seeds and tending to a garden, entering into a direct dialogue with non-ordinary reality requires slowing down our thoughts and movements to create opportunity for the experience to engage with us. We need to learn to carefully observe and watch the grass grow. If we think we know what we will experience, we are too entrenched in our understanding of ordinary reality, and we will miss it. Simply put, movement into the essence of the energetic realm requires learning to become permeable in our perception of what is and what is not, allowing the experience to be without trying to figure it out. Engaging with non-ordinary reality requires shifting attention from an ego perspective into a state of passive somatic awareness that involves receptive listening and waiting. All of this occurs with intent through an open dialogue between the subtle body and the energy field of all living things that surrounds us. Some shamans believe that conscious understanding is irrelevant because the subtle body and the land hold everything. If we see ourselves systemically as part of everything else within the context of our energetic connection, we feed and maintain our link to the state of being within the energetic collective and become grounded in the experience of both realities. A numinous experience in the energetic collective needs to be grounded in ordinary reality to make it real. I have heard Pacos ask, "Can you grow corn with it?" In other words, you need to be able to bring the experience back and use it in the day world for it to have meaning. Growing up in modern culture, we tend to see nature and the world around us through our lens of ordinary perception. However, by shifting our conscious awareness and paying attention energetically, it is possible to experience the earth as alive, as an energy body with its own consciousness. The act of knowing moves beyond the description of belief into a state of experiencing by being in it. In his identity transition from anthropologist to sorcerer, Castaneda wrote, "I felt that I was truthfully cut in two. Some part of me was not shocked at all and could accept any of Don Juan or Don Janeiro's acts at face value. However, there was another part of me that flatly refused. It was my strongest part. My conscious assessment was that I had accepted Don Juan's sorcery description of the world merely on an intellectual basis, while my body as a whole entity refused it. Thus, my dilemma. But then, over the course of the years, my association with Don Juan and Don Janeiro, I had experienced extraordinary phenomena, and those had been bodily experiences, not intellectual ones." Don Juan is describing the process Jung called shifting into awareness through the somatic unconscious or the subtle body. Jung described the subtle body as being beyond time and space, beyond our grasp. Per definition, the subtle body is a transcendental concept which cannot be expressed in terms of our language or our philosophical views, because they are all within a time and space continuum. Moving deeper into this in-between space or field is an aspect of the veil in which concepts of images and symbology cease to be applicable. According to Jung, the dialogue that takes place in this realm occurs in the form of images rather than words. By understanding the archetype through working with symbols, I would add that although the images may be the means of expressing and communicating the experience of the subtle body, the actual experience of the subtle body occurs energetically within the body at a deeper level than the symbolic level. To understand something symbolically is a cognitive operation of the mind, and to understand something with the mind requires separating from the experience. To understand something fully with the body entails one to be with it. Being with something energetically involves entering a state of fluidity, while having an awareness through the formation of a symbol necessitates being outside the experience. To see something symbolically and describe it requires being outside of it. The subtle body is the bridge between seeing and being, allowing both to be experienced simultaneously. Seeing through the subtle body using a felt sense is not limited to vision. In states of expanded awareness, the experience of a universal link to every living thing occurs through the energetic field. All knowledge, regardless of the sensory channel, is experienced through the subtle body. The experience can be kinesthetic, or happen through hearing sound, smell, or as an inner knowing. Through awareness in the subtle body, the experience of being in connection and seeing occurs at the same time. Pacos believe that all collective memory and experience is stored in the body, and that moving beyond ordinary reality can only occur and be experienced somatically. Pacos are also familiar with the leap of faith into the void of the unknown, experienced through a connection with the land through the body. In the realm of non-ordinary reality, using intent, the luminous body may transform into anything. Members of native cultures, like the Pacos in Peru, grow up learning about connection with the energetic collective through body experience. In his theory of cognitive development, Piaget proposed that a schematic mental map is necessary to learn and organize experience in a meaningful way. The personal stories or assumptions we create for ourselves based upon our interpretation of our life history, which form our episodic memory, is what defines and grounds our experience of the outer world. However, the problem with developing a template of assumptions based upon personal history is that over time, we often stop paying attention to what is actually occurring. Instead, we begin to base our conceptualization of reality on the conscious narrative we have created for ourselves and the collective narrative of others, not current and historical truth. We disconnect from the wisdom of the unconscious that lies at the deeper layers of our psyche and realms that are pre-verbal before words exist. Seeing truth requires taking in information through direct experience and dropping what we think we know. The state of direct experience offers clarity and freedom from our assumptions and ego defenses, such as denial, rationalization, repression, and anger, and fear that often take place in normal states of awareness. Pacos teach that the essential truth is always bound to direct experience, beyond the veil of ordinary reality and personal narrative. In the Andes, direct experience corresponds to the energetic realm that Pacos source or derive power from, existing outside of time and space. A Paco moves into a state of connectivity with the collective of the land by experiencing through the subtle body and sacred space. The land is the conduit of shifting into the experience of collectivity, from an individual to the universal state of the energetic collective. In Andean medicine, energetic experience corresponds to levels of engagement or states of perception. The literal level is the first level, which refers to normal awareness existing in the concrete world of everyday experience. The second level is experienced through dreams, metaphors, and images, and is more comprehensive. Winnicott described this as the transitional space of the imaginal realm between fantasy and reality. Jungians describe it as the imaginal realm in which inner dialogue, using the technique of active imagination, can occur. The third level is the mythic or archetypal realm, is existing outside linear time, where synchronistic events occur. The fourth level is the essential level of spirit or collectivity, which corresponds to the Ius Mundi. In describing these perceptual shifts, the question is asked, how is shifting between levels done? Moving beyond energetic states may occur in a couple of different ways through both individual and group practices. Shamanic ceremonies and rituals, by calling and holding sacred space, function as doorways that facilitate shifts of consciousness into other realities. During shamanic initiations, or karpais, the Pacos lineage is passed down, and the capacity of convocation or ability to hold power increases. The embodiment of knowledge by connecting with the land through the belly is an individual practice of acquiring power using intentional receptivity. Describing the actual process of using intentional receptivity is difficult because it occurs in an energetic, intuitively felt state rather than one directed by the ego. In my therapy practice, I have worked with career-minded women pregnant with their first child who are amazed that, other than taking care of themselves, there is nothing that they need to do for their unborn babies to develop. Shifting between states of awareness is somewhat different because, unlike pregnancy, there is some degree of consciousness required in order for it to occur. The ego is aware that it is happening, but it is no longer in charge and steps back. Similar to the practice of meditation, entering into the energetic realm is a process of holding space, allowing experience to unfold by letting go, and learning how to navigate around the ego. Examples of how intentional receptivity is experienced include attempting the challenge of drinking something while holding the throat open, relaxing one's eyes into an unfocused state and seeing the energy in the spaces between objects. Shifting between states of awareness begins by entering a receptive state using intent and seeing things as they are in the present moment without preconceived notions. In shamanism, to concentrate on holding space means to open up and to become available to the experience of the energetic world that surrounds us. Over time, shifting perception between physical and imaginal realms becomes easier by developing the ability to feel through the body. These states of intentional receptivity have been associated with psychic healing and mystical experience in shamanism. The shamanic collective is an energetic expression containing the archetypes, the unlimited depository of man's universal psychic heritage. In Andean medicine, the collective of the land is similar to the collective unconscious in the psyche. It is the depository of all experiences in nature and involves membership or affiliation with the mountain. The Quirupacos access and derive their power from sacred places, which happens to be mountains in Peru. The concept of affiliation with a mountain is similar to the concept of Christ in the Christian religion, in which Christ serves as a link to God. A mountain as a collective spirit is also comparable to the Bodhisattva, an intermediary between the person and the collective, and Buddhism. An aspect of the collective energetic experience of the land corresponds to Jung's definition of the objective psyche, which he said was the layering existing under the sum of all the archetypal structures. As aspects of the collective, both the objective psyche and the land hold energetic experience outside of the individual psyche. The occurrence of synchronistic events demonstrate that there are realms that extend beyond human consciousness. As forms of consciousness, they simply exist, with or without human experience. Although the ego is capable of perceiving energetic experience, it is not conscious of the experience while in a merged energetic state. The ego becomes conscious of the experience only after the experience differentiates and separates from the state of energetic fusion. Alani characterized shamanism as a technique of ecstasy. Webster's dictionary has defined it as excessive joy and a kind of cataleptic trance. Michael Harner described shamanism as a great mental and emotional adventure and wrote, "Ultimately, shamanic knowledge can only be acquired through individual experience. These definitions reflect that understanding energetically beyond words does not occur in the mind. It can only occur in a state experienced through the body, primarily the heart and the belly." Castaneda has described this as shifting the assemblage point, which refers to changing from mind to body awareness. While participating in an ayahuasca ceremony several years ago, now several decades ago, or a couple decades ago, I had an experience that illustrates this phenomena. In the Peruvian Amazon jungle, initiation ceremonies often involve ingesting ayahuasca, an indigenous plant. During the first stages of an ayahuasca journey, there is often a great deal of mental stimulation and activity. In my own initiatory experience, as someone not attracted to using hallucinogenic drugs, I was finding the increased neural action in my brain annoying, wanting and waiting for it to end. Similar to diving under a large wave to avoid getting pummeled while body surfing, I discovered that by shifting my attention state or awareness into my belly, I could drop underneath the experience and feel my way deeper into the energetic experience. Even though I was aware that my brain was still engaging full speed, I was able to drop into a calm centeredness, enabling me to experience connecting energetically with the jungle through my belly. The body is both the vessel that holds the energetic experience and the receptor of the experience. In Quechua, the language of the Andean Pacos, the word Pacpo refers to the energy body, the bubble of light infusing and surrounding the physical body. Pacos teach that experiencing through the belly enables one to enter a state of fluidity, a state of no separation. This corresponds to the Taoist experience of being in the flow and in balance with the energy around us. Connecting with the land and sensing through the belly is a means of linking to the source of the collective, which is the shamanic definition of empowerment. Because being in a state of fluidity is associated with connecting with something greater and vaster than the ego, the experience is different from one of separation, which is limited and ego-driven. Yet, because the ego's capacity for self-reflection can only occur through separation, there is a lag between the actual experience and the conscious reflection about the experience. In Andean medicine, the heart is the hub of connectivity in the body and the vehicle through which connection and relatedness with others is experienced. Pacos say that the heart is where we experience Munai energetically, a universal feeling state of love that is connected to the land and all living things surrounding us. As I've mentioned, in Peru, the mountains are alive and all forms of shamanism begin and end in connection with Pachamama or the land. There are two types of Pacos who source from Pachamama: the Pampa Messiahs or healers, and the Alta Messiahs who communicate directly with the spirit world and bring them literally into manifestation. The Alta Messiahs, the most highly respected group of Andean Pacos. They are the doorways between ordinary reality, Ke Pacha, and the Kausai Pacha, or living energy, of the energetic collective. They each have membership with a particular mountain and speak directly to spirits of that location. These Pacos source or derive their energy from the directors of the holy mountains, or Apu spirits, by engaging in an exchange with the energetic collective. The Apus of a mountain are an expression of the collective composite of Pachamama, or Mother Earth. The collective has different creative expressions that mirror people through the land. Alta Messiahs enter into dialogues with the Apus and work to open Seke lines, or ley lines, in the mountains to promote healing in the earth. Seke lines are existing energy lines which connect the energy meridians of the earth. These Seke lines intersect wakas, places that are power spots, infused with energy. By activating Seke lines, the veil between ordinary and non-ordinary reality becomes more transparent, allowing for a greater flow of energy in communication with the collective. Being in these locations heightens a person's perception, and achieving increased and expanded states of awareness becomes easier. The mountain collective is the depository of experience recorded in the land, Pacha after Pacha, or lifetime after lifetime. There are different types of Pacos determined by the spirits they communicate with, based on functions that include, and I'm talking about the Alta Messiahs right now, but are not limited to channeling lineage, talking to sacred places, speaking with lightning, or having dialogues with the ancestors. Alta Messiahs, the most powerful of the Pacos in their capacity to hold power, call the Apus, or mountain spirits. The Apus are the archetypal manifestation of the energetic collective, or prima materia, and take on a form experienced in physical reality, representative of the Alta Messiah leading the ceremonial ritual. In ceremony, the Alta Messiahs possess the energetic capacity or power to call the Apu mountain spirits into actual physical manifestation. Through their ability to contain energy or hold space, they serve as gateways for aspects of the Apu spirits to emerge, enabling those who are present to enter direct dialogues with the Apus. Time is a factor that affects experiencing Kausai Pacha and the thinning of a cosmic veil between realities. Many myths from all over the world describe the presence of a cosmic veil that becomes more transparent at different times, causing the other world to be more accessible. The idea that intersection of time and space is meaningful and can influence an individual's life is prevalent in many cultures. In the Quechua language, an intersection of time and space is a Pacha. A Pacha is an Incan map of consciousness referring to the structure that contains the Kausai, or life force. In Andean cosmology, the veil between the worlds of Ke Pacha and Kausai Pacha is a relationship between time and space. In every person's life, there are significant events occurring at specific times and places that influence personal fate and destiny. These pivotal points on one's life journey possess greater amounts of causa. Recollecting or recapitulating can alter a pacho and provide an opportunity to break free from the lineage tied to old patterns and wounds from the past. In Andean medicine, Kanai is the process of recapitulating and remembering one's true identity. In the context of Buddhism and Eastern spiritual philosophy, it is a means of working through karma, the principle governing moral causation. Both the shamanic practice of soul retrieval and working through past trauma in psychotherapy are other examples of recapitulating. There is movement from the personal to the mythic collective as energy sourcing shifts from the hucha or dense energy of past trauma and complexes into samai, or the light energy of the great apus or winged beings. When a paco is no longer claimed by traumatic personal history, they become open and through their increased availability have greater capacity to engage in direct communication and dialogue with the sacred mountains. In Andean medicine, as the capacity to hold power grows, the connection between the land, the Andean Paco's medicine body, or mesa, which I'll talk about shortly, and the subtle body grows stronger, and the ability to become a conduit becomes reality, to serve as a gateway becomes easier. The more availability and conscious awareness a Paco has, the greater their power and capacity to shift from ordinary reality, or K Pacha, into numinous experience, or Kausai Pacha. In cultures practicing shamanism, the ability to shift between states in the inner and outer world, or the realms of ordinary and non-ordinary reality in service of the community, determine the Paco's capacity to hold power, as well as their standing in the community. In the Andes, Andean medicine fulfills a function in the community and is a path of service. For it to have value, a Paco must have the ability to grow corn with the knowledge gained from mystical experience that often takes place through initiation. According to shamanic belief, all realities are simultaneously experienced in a state of collectivity. As these realities move from the energetic realm into the mythic realm, they differentiate into mental forms through images and symbols, often associated with the upper, lower, and middle worlds. Accessing these worlds occurs through the processes of shamanic journeying and active imagination. Climbing a tree through layers of sky in the imaginal realms to enter the upper world, or following the roots of a tree deep through layers of the earth are familiar experiences in shamanic journeying. According to Michael Harner, author of The Way of the Shaman, each of these regions has levels, separated from each other by veils, membranes into the upper world or doorways into the earth in the lower world. In the Quechua language, the word Quepacha describes the worlds of Incan cosmology. Castaneda wrote extensively about his own encounters with the energetic collective through his apprenticeship with the sorcerer Don Juan. In his writing, Castaneda has described the shift between ordinary and non-ordinary reality as a bottom-up process that occurs through somatic body experience. Peruvian Pacos also agree that the way to gather information is through the body, in a state Castaneda referred to as heightened awareness. The subtle body contains the blueprint of wholeness and the totality of one's lineage. Pacos teach that by energetically remembering through our bodies, it is possible to connect to the source or the energetic collective. Pacos would add that this embodiment of knowledge ultimately comes from connecting to the body of the Lamb. Although psychological approaches may facilitate internal psychic processes linking mind and body, subtle body experience is an interaction occurring within the energetic field that extends beyond the psyche and the physical body into the psychoidal realm of the unconscious. During the phase of re-entry that occurs in the preconscious psychological state closest to ego consciousness, it is possible to work with symbols and images that emerge from the unconscious. As Jung suggested, the formation of symbols can be helpful in configuring the archetypal energy associated with a numinous experience into a representational format, making it easier to assimilate into conscious awareness. However, in states of awareness that lie further from ego consciousness and closer to the energetic realm, experiencing the felt sense or being with the feeling is an energetic experience that happens in the subtle body. It is sensed as a faint thread connecting conscious awareness with the deeper levels of the energetic collective, where no shape or form exists. These realms are closer to spirit than matter, causing them to be experienced energetically rather than symbolically. All that remains constant between these states is that the experience is accessible in the subtle body. The formation of symbols that takes place in the imaginal realms of energetic experience is closer to conscious awareness in ordinary reality. In the deeper energetic realms, hanging on to the image no longer works because there is no image to hang on to. Paraphrasing Christopher Bollas's statement in The Shadow of the Object on the development of healthy object relations, the experience of the object or symbol precedes the knowing of the object. Bollas's comment applies to understanding the psychological organization of shamanic experiencing. Following the feeling of energetic experience that exists at a preconscious level is more consistent means of tracking because it is deeper than symbolic representation and imagery. Castaneda has explained this phenomena using slightly different terminology. In The Eagle's Gift, he wrote, "The richness of our perception on the left side was a post facto realization. Our interaction appeared to be rich in the light of our capacity to remember it. We became cognizant then that in these states of heightened awareness we had perceived everything in one big clump, one bulky mass of inextricable detail. We called this ability to perceive everything at once intensity. For years we had found it impossible to examine the separate constituent parts of these chunks of experience. We had been unable to synthesize these parts into a sequence that would make sense to the intellect. Since we were incapable of these syntheses, we could not remember. Our capacity to remember was in reality incapacity to put the memory of our perception on a linear basis. We could not lay our experiences flat, so to speak, on a timeline and arrange them in a sequential order. The experiences were available to us, but at the same time, they were impossible to retrieve, for they were blocked by a wall of intensity. The task of remembering then was properly the task of joining our left and right sides, of reconciling these two distinct forms of perception into a unified whole. It was the task of consolidating the totality of oneself by rearranging intensity into a linear sequence. In conscious awareness, the process Castaneda is describing corresponds to what psychologists sometimes refer to as mindfulness. In Mindfulness and Psychotherapy, Grimmer, Siegel, and Fulton define mindfulness as experiencing the present moment in the mind and the body. They describe mindfulness as an intentional practice of directing attention to the present moment using awareness, not absorbed in thought processes, because it occurs before the mental formation of words in the mind. Bullis has called this phenomena knowing the unknown. Holding a focus of mindfulness is a way of bridging the space-time continuum and creating a psychological state conducive to the recapitulation process after a shamanic experience. It generates a reflective space of receptivity where understanding of the experience develops through the process of mentation or thinking about thinking. The next section is a personal account of my experience on a mountaintop in Peru after receiving initiation rites from an Ultima Psychic. My own process of remembering through the body took place over the course of several days, which actually was the course of several months. As is often the case when working with numinous archetypal material, describing what transpired becomes a process of approximation, a circumambulation that is not linear. At best, these verbal descriptions are only vague recollections of direct experience. Along with my personal narrative, I am including Castaneda's descriptions of shifting from heightened awareness to normal awareness that correspond to my encounter. Castaneda used sacred medicine of plants in some of his shamanic experiences. However, none of the following experiences that I will be describing was drug-induced. While sitting on the top of a mountain with my eyes closed, I felt myself entering a trance state. I saw a series of doorways or openings of light with 5 points, each that opened up onto each other so that one doorway opened into another doorway and onto another. I began to experience a succession of waves of convulsions or intense shaking that echoed through my entire body. I heard a voice keep telling me to hold it, and I understood that holding the energy meant containing it physically by maintaining a focus of intent through the process. Intuitively, I knew that my ability to hold the energy in my body would determine the degree to which I would be able to integrate the power of energy being downloaded that I was receiving from the mountain. In the Eagle's Gift, Castaneda wrote, "My body began to shake out of control. I had a sense of duality. Perhaps what I call my rational self, incapable of controlling the rest of me, took the seat of a spectator. Some part of me was watching, as another part of me shook." Over the course of the next several days in ceremony, I felt intense waves of energy continually running through my physical body. At certain times, when I experienced contractions in my solar plexus and belly, the process became painful. At one point, I felt I was in labor and giving birth in the process. Afterward, the waves subsided. I felt incredibly energized and in a state of euphoria. Throughout this entire process, although in a trance, a part of me remained conscious. On some level, I was aware that this was necessary. Otherwise, I would not have the intentionality needed to hold power. In a separate reality, Castaneda wrote, as impossible things kept happening, he becomes aware that a sort of power is emerging, a power that comes out of his body as he progresses on the path of knowledge. At first, it is like an itching on the belly or a warm spot that cannot be soothed. Then it becomes a pain, a great discomfort. Sometimes the pain and the discomfort are so great that the warrior has convulsions for months. The more severe the convulsions, the better for him. A fine power is always heralded by great pain. Castaneda goes on to say that the pain is what facilitates a shift of focus into the body when one acquires will. Will is a force or power that is necessary in seeing beyond the veil of ordinary reality. June 8th, 2009. At times I had the sense of going through the doorways and looking into a mirror reflection. It was not an actual mirror, but seemed more like an energetic aspect of myself that I needed to face. I heard myself telling the reflection that I would meet it and that we were equals. I knew through the state of connectivity that I was an equal with everything I was experiencing, as we were all the same. We were all energy. I sensed that to claim my power and hold the energy that I would be required to face as equal, whatever I saw or experienced, it was necessary to honor the experience in myself. Sometimes the reflection I was looking at became dark. I recognized this as an aspect of my own shadow that I was seeing and needed to come to terms with. In shamanic terms, these deeper layers of the psyche are sometimes referred to as seeing in darkness. In dream work, darkness represents the unconscious. Shamans take seeing in darkness both literally and metaphorically. In contemporary writing on shamanic journeying, reference is frequently made to an altered state of consciousness through which one works in darkness. June 10th, 2009. During these couple of days, I had faint memories of what felt intuitively to be a past life. In Peru, perhaps with these same apus, at a time I had misused power. I had the sense in that moment that this was in the past and would no longer claim me. I had returned, committed to serving the light of the collective. I tracked the dark memory to a thread I still experience in myself, linked to a competitive nature. I noticed it. In making the shift from the personal to the collective, I remembered that we do not get rid of our personal shadows. Rather, we need to become aware of them and then place them on the shelf. I was aware that consciously a shift in awareness is made by attending to and focusing on the light. Through this, it became clear to me that I could focus on my own personal narrative, complexes, and inner dynamics, acknowledging that these elements of my psyche exist, and then shift the focus to the energetic level, where the personal becomes grounded in the background and the collective becomes figure or the primary focus. In the process of shamanic initiation, power is layered into the physical body in light. While I was sitting on the mountaintop in a visionary experience, feeling myself being infused with energy, I realized that my personal narrative was there and would always be there. I've heard Paco say that we do not get rid of our egos. Instead, we move beyond the ego into a flow or state of fluidity by entering into a dialogue with the land through our hearts and in our bodies. This flow is beyond words, personal narratives, and stories. The stories we create or bring back from shamanic encounters are our way of validating our experience with the unknown. Using language is an attempt to extract the real value from the experience by putting it into a framework that we can comprehend. Pacos teach that the essence of the true experience is always beyond words. Jung also said that we do not get rid of our shadow and complexes. Rather, we develop an awareness of these aspects of our psyche so that they no longer dominate our thoughts and claim us. Doing my shamanic work in Peru, I was continually reminded not to focus on working through the personal narrative. Like Hercules cleaning out the stables on Mount Olympus, it is an impossible feat. Instead, I learned to shift or change channels of perception so that I could experience the energetic realm. Throughout my shamanic experience in Peru, I felt the presence of an ally figure, or an inner figure that existed in the imaginal realm. At times, I experienced the ally energetically, while at other times it took the shape of a giant bird or birdman. I remembered initially meeting the ally several years ago in a dream, in the form of a snake. Then, before going to the Amazon, I experienced his presence again in the form of a black jaguar that surrounded and protected me. Later, I learned that the jaguar was the spirit of the Amazon jungle. Shortly before going to Peru for the first time, the inner figure of a birdman appeared during an act of imagination. A couple of weeks later, after arriving in Cusco, I was walking through a market with one of the Ultima Psychics I was studying with. Suddenly, he stopped me and pointed to a painting of a birdman being displayed by one of the local vendors and said, "There is the figure that appears in your visions." Eventually, it occurred to me that these animal forms, the snake, the jaguar, and the bird, or condor, were the same mythological beings found in the cosmology of Andean medicine, as Amaru the snake, Chocochinchai the jaguar, and Apuchin the great condor. I was somewhat perplexed and wondered if perhaps I had plugged into a collective shamanic experience that was influencing my dreams and visions. June 12, 2009. Over the course of several days of energetic layering, I was in constant dialogue with my ally or inner figure, who assumed the form of a birdman. At times during the process of energetic layering, I would see with my eyes closed an intense golden yellow light that completely surrounded me. Within the light, I saw doorways consisting of 5 points in the energetic outline of a bird with extended wings, all composed of a radiant light. A couple of times these visions would shift, and I experienced myself actually shifting into the form of a bird. I felt what it was like to grow wings and to stretch them. I felt myself flying and soaring, flapping my wings aggressively, then gliding with the momentum. I could feel myself circling higher into the air and then diving through the air closer to the earth. I do not remember ever before experiencing such a great sense of freedom. I loved the experience of stretching my wings out as far as they would go and gliding with the breeze. I looked down at the earth and noticed how small everything looked. At times, I was reluctant to look down when I realized how far above the earth I was. I remember hearing the voice of my ally, the birdman, saying to me, "If you are asking for visions, you must be willing to see." I promised I would try to hold the intention to look at what I was being shown face to face. The archetypal image of the bird is often associated with shamanic experience. In Andean medicine, Apuchin is the large archetypal or mythic bird, often a condor or eagle, or a hummingbird, that offers wisdom and awareness linked through connection and vision through the third eye. In the realm of the condor, everything is crafted with intent through vision. Pacos say that this is the place of wisdom and dreams. Okay, so Jeffrey Raff, a Jungian analyst in Colorado, has written that our inner figures and egos need each other to grow in these other realms. He has described the ally as the intermediary or necessary conduit between the ego and psychoidal experience. As I reflect on my initiatory experience in the energetic collective, I remembered that the emanations of light came through the energetic shape of a bird, Apuchin. For me, this bird is the intermediary, the ally, the bodhisattva to the energetic realm. In The Wheel of Time, Castaneda wrote, "The eagle, the power that governs the destinies of all living things, reflects equally and at once all those living things. There is no way, therefore, for man to pray to the ego, to ask for favors, to hope for grace. The human part of the eagle is too insignificant to move the whole." I have heard the comment that Castaneda was writing in metaphor and that Don Juan was a fictitious character. In his books, Castaneda's description of the eagle has been interpreted as being a symbol for the self, a representation of the numinous. Within the context of ordinary reality, it is easier and perhaps more comfortable to understand his description of the spirit of the eagle in his writing as a symbolic metaphor for mystical experience. However, based on my own experience, I would challenge these statements. Although his writing can easily be understood and worked with symbolically in the realm of ordinary reality, As one moves from the symbolic into the energetic realm, what Castaneda was describing for me was actual experience. In The Fire from Within, Castaneda stated, the old seers actually saw the indescribable force, which is the source of all sentient beings. They called it the eagle because in a few glimpses they could sustain, they saw it as something that represented a black and white eagle of infinite size. They saw in it the eagle that bestows awareness. The eagle creates sentient beings so that they will live and enrich the awareness it gives them with life. They also saw that it is the eagle who devours that same enriched awareness after making sentient beings relinquish at the moment of death. Being touched by a numinous experience often leaves one with a sense of having undergone a life-changing event that has left them physically carrying the archetypal force. The power of this energy can be overwhelming if it is not directed or channeled in a meaningful way. The creative expression may take on many forms, from the mounds of mashed potatoes Richard Dreyfuss builds after his interaction with aliens in the film Close Encounters of the Third Kind, to an artist painting after a numinous dream. Creative expression can offer a venue to enter into a dialogue with an energetic experience. Von Franz said that when material crosses the threshold into consciousness, it becomes altered in its quality, and when it comes back into consciousness, it becomes altered again. In science fiction films are many examples of this phenomena. In The Fly, a scientist who crosses a threshold begins to morph into a fly, because in coming back, he brought a fly back with him in a fused state. There can be a sense of confusion with the realization that what one knew is no longer true. Adaptation, after emerging from connection with the energetic collective in the psychic zone farthest away from consciousness, requires assuming a flexible, non-linear approach that may not always be consistent with ordinary reality as we know it. I am reminded of a space shuttle that goes off into the atmosphere and then returns, landing in a different time and in a different place. There are multiple examples of time travelers who come back in a different place in time and cannot return to the place from which they started. When we step outside of the comfort zone of our personal narrative in the world, as we know it, we change our perceptions of the world. Yet we come back to the same world we left and now experience it differently. Einstein's theory of relativity describes how moving at the speed of light beyond ordinary reality alters the properties of time and space. He discovered that two events that are simultaneous for one observer may not be simultaneous for another. If observers are in relative motion, objects become shortened in the direction that they are moving with respect to the observer. And moving clocks have been found to tick more slowly than an observer's stationary clock. The phenomena of altered events also occurs when observing the energetic experience from the actual experience of the energetic collective itself. Von Franz and Jung believed that the process of remembering becomes easier if approached through circumambulation, moving around the archetypal material symbolically, using processes such as amplification and association. They propose that the richness of numinous experience requires a symbolic form or image to anchor it, which originates and emerges from the unconscious. This process of creating an image or a symbol is an alchemical process of coagulatio, or manifestation. This process of remembering through circumambulating around a symbol or an image is a top-down approach that eventually becomes grounded in the body when one has an aha moment. The realm of the energetic collective can only be consciously accessed through the irrational, intuitive, and sensate functions, which are not processes involving the ego. Imagine a bank of fog settling in along a coast. Although such an occurrence can occur rapidly with a sudden onset, it is linear. Drawing this natural event realistically would involve making sweeping gestural movements of layering the fog all at once. It would be difficult to capture the mood with precise, detailed mark making. This phenomena, illustrated in the fog, describes the process of reintegration after shamanic experience as well. At the level of the energetic collective, everything functions as a web or matrix of light beyond symbolic form. Similar to trying to explain the acasual phenomena of synchronicity as a casual event, attempting to bend an energetic experience to fit back into meaning associated with the temporal spatial reality distorts the experience. It is unfeasible to keep the integrity of an experience of the collective intact using logical thinking because the same rules do not apply. The experience is irrational, not rational. 2 months after returning home, and this is still 2009, I have spent time working in the inner realm, trying to recapture and comprehend the essence of the experience. As my journey into the inner world of energetic experience deepened, I began to sense that the energetic realm lay beyond what I had come to understand to be the archetypal regions, into a place where separation and form no longer exist. Some alchemists refer to this as the prima materia. The Kabbalists call this the veils of negative existence. Part of my motivation was a need to articulate in writing what I experienced from my initiation in Peru. The other motivator was being a strong longing to return to a state of conjunctio. As I spent more time in these energetic states, symbols, images, and even archetypes themselves began to feel superficial, and I sensed there was more. The concept of a continuum of the energetic collective emerged from this state, and I sensed that this may be a link to understanding what I had experienced. The conceptual construct of a continuum of an energetic collective includes the psychoidal realm and ranges from the subtle body into the land. The continuum, I imagine, exists at the essential energetic level, where there is no form or separation. Intrapsychically, it intersects Jung's proposed continuum that ranges from instinct to archetype. The point of contact where the continuum intersects is experienced within the subtle body. The point where the continuums touch pierces the veil between the energetic collective and ordinary reality. My hunch is that what I'm proposing is only a superficial description of something that is vast and beyond all human senses, and in reality the energetic collective would not exist on a continuum at all, because it is not linear and exists beyond time and space. As I continue to explore the realm of the energetic collective, trying to go deeper, the state of vision of light began to change, or rather I began to change, and it began to feel like fire. As I attempted to write or describe what I was experiencing, I began to lose the sense of where I ended and where the energy began, and my words stopped making sense. I sensed that my ego was beginning to decompensate. I began to feel I was losing myself, being consumed in the fire. Needless to say, it was very frightening and disorienting. I stopped writing and struggled to find my footing in this world again. I sat with the medicine bundle of my mesa and went to see my acupuncturist, who put needles in my feet. I tried to fill my body and to remember mundane things like what I had for dinner the night before. I began to wonder if I would go crazy and decompensate and not be able to find my way back. As I tried to talk to people close to me, I realized that my speech was becoming too tangential. I could see the concern in their eyes, and I knew that the intuitive leaps I was making in my thinking were creating gaps that were becoming too great for anyone to follow closely. The fire of the light became increasingly uncomfortable, and I found it becoming harder to disengage, so I stopped. I needed to will myself back from the other world and close the door to the veil of the other world for the time being, to shield my ego and sense of identity. I was in the chaos of the prima materia, and I needed protection. Although I spent pages writing about the function of the land in Andean medicine, what I had been writing about, trying to explain, finally began to make sense to me experientially, and I began to embody this understanding. Ettinger has written about coagulating spirit into matter in the anatomy of the psyche. I felt that the land and the shaman's mesa serve as the ego's shelter, a way of anchoring the energetic experience. In connection with the energetic collective, the Paco is the pacha, or doorway, that the electric current runs through, and without a way of grounding the experience, they would be burned up in the fire of the divine. For the Paco who is working with the energetic collective, the land is essential, and the Great Mother, the Temenis, that holds the energy. It is the protection against chaos and madness. It was then that the purpose of archetypes and symbols began to make sense, and I began to understand their necessity. Among other things, the images and symbols function as the ego's protection against the chaos of the prima materia. In re-entry, the symbolic image becomes the philosopher's stone, the way to come back with meaning. It is the buffer and the insulator, the psyche's way of coagulating energetic experience. In supervision conversations, Nathan Schwartz-Salant told me that coming back from other realms was literally a birthing process. In The Imaginary Twin, Bion has described the process of splitting as the mechanism that allows the formation of symbols to occur. I started looking for ways to ground myself using my thinking function as a means of separating from the actual energetic experience. I began looking for answers by revisiting psychoanalytic theory, reading material that previously had not seemed to me to be of relevant interest. I started to notice the tie between the development process in early object relations and my own reentry experience. I began to wonder if the Paco's connection to the land through the subtle body provided a temenos or container that helped to facilitate the ego's process of separating from the energetic collective, similar to what happens during infancy, when the ego separates from the symbiotic relationship with the mother and forms as a separate identity. I realized that I do not live in a culture that supports these kind of experiences, and know that I must find a way to return to and connect with the land. If I were living in Peru, I would have the support of my village, my Ayu. Other Pacos would understand and help me create offerings for Pachamama, the Great Mother. I realize that I feel very, very alone. In our extroverted culture, those of us who have had these kinds of experience often become more introverted, spending time in solitude. I realized I must turn to my inner figures or allies in order to digest and metabolize what has happened. After having a numinous experience with the other realm, the longing for reconnection can become a raison d'etre, or driving force. After returning from a Peru trip involving shamanic initiation, a companion got back on a plane and returned a week later when the sense of isolation and displacement he experienced became too intolerable. In extreme cases, this desire or need for connection can be so strong that it develops into a compulsion. Richard Dreyfuss's character in The Encounter of the Third Kind demonstrated this kind of compulsive behavior after a numinous experience with aliens. A major problem in Western culture inherent to the process of returning after a shamanic experience is the incongruence with collective values. Our society places great value on the autonomy of the individual at the expense of becoming dependent upon modern technology. In our society, expressing vulnerability, the need for community, and doing things the old-fashioned way is weakness. In Ecstasy, Understanding the Psychology of Joy, Robert Johnson wrote, "Craving spiritual ecstasy We mistakenly seek material fulfillment. We chase after a phantom, and when we catch it, in the form of money, more food, more sex, more drugs, more oblivion, we find that we have been chasing ephemeral happiness when we should have invited lasting joy. So what do we do next? We use all the intellectual power at our command to fill the void. We read books and take classes looking for the answer. But the answer can only be found in the sensual world of Dionysus, and we have forgotten where that's at. Maybe the re-entry process is not about piercing anything at all, but requires that we learn to sit beside and tend to the experience of the collective, moving into it where we can. This path would be more consistent with the path of the Pacos, is trying to figure out, similar to the hero looking back in the process of returning from the journey of the descent and losing what he has gained. It could be that the re-entry process is one that requires us to wait patiently and tend to the fires until we can eventually be beamed up to return home. Instead of sticking to the image, the opus of re-entry could be to sit and hold the energy, which serves as a numinous beacon for the mothership of the collective. My sense is that what we are actually waiting for in this process of re-entry is the emergence of a creative spark, otherwise known as the transcendental function, to serve as an access point or an intersection between the energetic collective and the archetypal continuums that occur through the subtle body. So where do we go from here? We go back in with the memories of re-entry that have already been laid down, the guideposts as a means of making meaning. Similar to the therapeutic process involved in helping clients heal past trauma, we move back and forth, in and out of the experience, feeling it and then describing it. This is a slow process occurring over time that must be built brick by brick or walked step by step. As Pacos say, poco y poco, little by little. Castaneda wrote, "The eagle's gift of freedom is not a bestowal, but a chance."
Thank you very much. Okay, we've got to open up for discussion now.
Hello, Deborah.
Hello, Deborah.
I thought that was a really wonderful presentation. So thank you so much for sharing that material, such interesting experiences. And it's so intriguing how Carl Jung's spiritual awareness offers a deep critique of the prevailing assumptions of our Western world, as you discussed directly. And when I was 20, I read all of Carlos Castaneda's books, and I was particularly interested in the ontology of the tunnel and the Nagual. And I would just be eager for you to reflect on the discussions that Carlos had with Don Juan about trying to understand the meaning of the Nagual. The discussion that you raised about different realities, about ordinary reality as the world of the tunnel, and non-ordinary reality as the world of the Nagual is really I think a good way to explore it. So this sense that there is a non-ordinary reality that we do need to recognize and in some way apprehend, even if we can't comprehend it, seems to be something that's central to the shamanic worldview. And so that whole question of how the non-ordinary reality relates to religious experience is just a really profound challenge because I really liked what you were saying about how our symbolic language is a way to try to I can't remember your exact phrase, but relate to engage with the non-ordinary.
Well, I think, one of the things that, I was, when I first wrote this, it felt like days and then it felt like months. But the truth of the matter is it probably was about 20 years until I landed where I am now. And one of the things that I discovered when I was actually writing this book was I started studying quantum theory. And it was really validating because one of the things after coming back with some of what I saw, and being a psychologist and thinking about if I was to explain this, I would have sounded delusional. And I found quantum theory really validating as a way of starting to understand it or explain it in Western terms. And then I think where I've gone with this more recently, I just actually finished a book after this one on Andean codes or Incan codes, and there's this idea that there's some basic universal truths in the way the world is organized that you can see in Hermetic philosophy. They're just these patterns, and I think there's some essential properties, and I think that may be one way of understanding it, because I think everything we're really talking about is process. And and what they would say in Andean medicine is different pachas or different paradigms. Carrie, you look like when I came back, and I was actually in a reentry process, and I was just painting helped me. Besides gardening, painting helped a lot because it was sort of a way of starting to download and have a way of dialoguing with the experience before I had any words for it. Well, the thing is, with a lot of the paintings I did, how would you really describe them? There really isn't a image in it. It's more of an experience. I don't think and I've seen these paintings, there's no way if somebody said, okay, paint a certain painting, I couldn't replicate it because I don't hold it that way in my mind. If somebody said, go paint an elephant that you painted years ago, I could get closer to that. I could come up with a felt experience, but in terms of exactly where I put the paint and how I position things, it would never look like that again. So I think, maybe that's one way. I think that's one of the things I appreciate about paint.